Arrogant millionaire leaves, pregnant wife for mistress. Years later, she returns with a baby secret. From the moment James Parker first laid eyes on the glamour and grandeur of high society, he wanted it all: money, power, and freedom. But ambition can be dangerous, especially when it eclipses matters of the heart. In this gripping story, we witness the downfall of a once happy marriage as James's arrogance drives him away from his pregnant wife, Addison, and into the arms of a calculating mistress. Years later, Addison reappears without warning, holding a baby in her arms and harboring a secret that threatens to unravel the entire Parker dynasty. Brace yourself for betrayal, redemption, and unexpected twists at every turn. James Parker was born and raised in the bustling suburbs of Westchester County, where immaculate lawns and stately homes betrayed both wealth and deep-rooted family politics. His father, Edmund Parker, was a well-connected real estate developer who specialized in refurbishing historic properties across the East Coast, including a landmark deal in Charleston that, for a time, made headlines in the New York Times. James was brought up in a world where extravagance was the norm, where people measured success in zeros on a check and in the names one could casually drop at dinner parties. Even as a young teenager, James exhibited a talent for negotiation and a taste for extravagance. In high school, he drove a sleek Mustang while his peers struggled to pay for used cars. At the age of 19, he made his first major business deal by flipping a derelict apartment building his father had handed over to him as a learning project. Over the course of 2 years, James cultivated that small real estate flip into a thriving enterprise. By the time he was 25, James had garnered the reputation of being the next big thing, a golden child in the real estate world. It was at a gala in downtown Manhattan that James first laid eyes on Addison Sullivan. She was a recent graduate of Columbia University, planning to become a journalist. Unlike the women James typically courted, those dazzled by his fortune, Addison was thoroughly unimpressed by his flashy lifestyle. When James tried to charm her with stories of private jets and lavish vacations, Addison simply smiled politely, sipped her champagne, and gently redirected the conversation to less boastful topics. For James, her indifference was electrifying, a challenge he hadn't experienced. It compelled him to chase not just her attention, but also her approval. Despite her initial skepticism, Addison eventually recognized there was something more to James beyond his bravado. He exhibited genuine curiosity about her aspirations, her passion for investigative journalism, and her small-town upbringing in Rhinebeck. On their first official date, James swapped out his Lamborghini for a borrowed Ford sedan, taking her to a cozy family restaurant in her old neighborhood. They spent the evening talking about their dreams, with James envisioning an empire built on real estate acquisitions, and Addison describing her desire to uncover stories that would actually change lives. Love blossomed quickly. With Addison by his side, James found himself focusing more on philanthropic endeavors. He even invested in a scholarship program at Addison's alma mater for aspiring journalists. Addison, for her part, started to see James not as a smug heir, but as a wounded soul who had rarely known simple, unadorned affection. Before long, they were engaged, then married in a grand ceremony at Edmund Parker's estate, replete with antique crystal chandeliers, string quartets, and a guest list that read like "Who's Who in East Coast business." In the early days, their relationship was a formidable partnership. Addison balanced James's flashy risk-taking with caution and empathy. Meanwhile, James's confidence helped Addison break into the media world. She landed a job at a major publication, The Ledger, under the mentorship of Patricia Moncrief, a seasoned journalist who had famously exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud scandal in the city. Addison's career trajectory looked bright, and James's business acumen soared to new heights. They presented a powerful image of a modern couple, driven, supportive, and, seemingly, deeply in love. Yet cracks in their facade started to form as James's ambitions grew unchecked. With more money came more demands. He expanded his operations, purchasing plots in Los Angeles, Miami, and even overseas in London. Addison grew busier as well. Her responsibilities at the newspaper pushed her to chase leads for major investigative reports. Their weekend getaways turned into phone calls from different time zones. Breakfast at home turned into James grabbing coffee on a private jet. A sense of distance settled between them, although they tried to ignore the warning signs, attributing it to being a power couple forging their own separate paths. The seeds of trouble were planted in these busy days. James had always thrived on recognition and applause. Addison's time was increasingly consumed by her budding career, rather than being his unwavering cheerleader. Each business success for James demanded yet another, bigger triumph. As Addison advanced, she found herself hungry for the autonomy and respect that came with her new roles. She no longer wanted to be introduced merely as James Parker's wife. Meanwhile, James wasn't prepared for a partner who might compete with or overshadow him in any way. They were still a team on the surface, but the tension grew, unspoken, invisible to outsiders who saw only the expensive suits and the magazine spreads featuring their philanthropic endeavors. Deep down, Addison began to suspect that James was changing into something far more self-centered and ego-driven than she ever imagined. But whenever she attempted to bring up her concerns, James would brush them aside with a dismissive grin and an extravagant gift, be it a diamond bracelet or a sudden trip to Paris. When Addison asked for emotional support, James offered material comfort instead. She felt placated but never truly heard. Little did Addison know that even those fleeting moments of her husband's genuine attention were about to evaporate, sending her on a journey from hopeful partner to abandoned wife, pregnant, alone, and betrayed by the man who had once vowed to protect her above all else. The unraveling of James and Addison's marriage began slowly, like an ominous storm creeping in from the horizon. Amid business trips and late-night meetings, James frequently entertained clients and attended numerous galas without Addison, who was often chasing high-profile leads for her newspaper. During one of these lavish events in Miami, James crossed paths with Charlotte Wilson. Charlotte was a public relations maven well known for sculpting the public images of wealthy entrepreneurs, sometimes papering over controversies with a wave of her manicured hand. She radiated a cunning charm, the type that made people feel special while never fully revealing her own secrets. Like James, Charlotte had spent her life around affluence. She knew how to navigate power dynamics, and more importantly, she recognized the vulnerabilities of the overly ambitious. James found her refreshing, at least initially. Unlike Addison, who was increasingly vocal about the moral implications of his acquisitions, such as displacing low-income families to build luxury condos, Charlotte championed every bold expansion James made. She flattered his ego. She admired his relentless drive. She never asked him to slow down or reconsider. It wasn't long before he began to rely on her for PR strategies, hooking her into his day-to-day business dealings under the guise of growing the brand. Over the following months, Addison sensed the shift. James had started to mention Charlotte's name with casual frequency. If Addison asked about his day, his grin would flicker whenever Charlotte's marketing success came up. Subtle hints and expensive perfume lingering on his suit jacket, suspicious text messages, timed conspicuously with Addison's absence, only served to feed Addison's growing suspicions. Still, She convinced herself that James would never risk their marriage for a mere fling. They had invested so much in each other, how could it all topple over a seductive PR consultant? Yet Addison's illusions disintegrated one cold December evening. She came home early from work, thrilled to share the news that she was pregnant. She was trembling with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, imagining their future as a small family. Opening the front door of their penthouse, she froze at the sight of Charlotte's coat hanging over the arm of the living room couch. Before Addison could set down her keys, she heard hushed voices from the master bedroom. No longer able to remain silent, Addison burst in. She found them there in the same bed where she and James had laughed, loved, and made plans for the future, locked in a passionate embrace. Shock, devastation, and fury exploded in Addison, leaving her speechless. Charlotte responded first, slipping into her clothes with haughty composure and swiftly departing without a word. James, half-dressed and staggered by Addison's sudden appearance, mumbled excuses about business stress and a moment of weakness, but Addison was too heartbroken to absorb any of his feeble explanations. What cut deepest for Addison wasn't just the betrayal, but James's cavalier response when she confessed her pregnancy in the midst of the argument. Instead of relief or excitement, he expressed hesitation. His expression was not that of a joyful father-to-be, but of a man burdened by a complication he hadn't accounted for in his grand life blueprint. Addison was aghast, tears burning down her cheeks as she stared at the man she'd married, the father of her unborn child, who looked as though the pregnancy was an inconvenience. The argument escalated to shouting until Addison's voice cracked from exhaustion. James demanded that she calm down, offering to work things out, but Addison could sense that James saw the baby and her feelings as obstacles to his unstoppable ascent in business and social circles. In a final, breathless moment, Addison told him she was leaving. She vowed that if he couldn't even begin to show remorse or excitement about their child, then he didn't deserve to be a father. That night, Addison walked away, determined to forge a life for her unborn child, away from James's toxic influence. She moved into a small apartment in the outskirts of the city, aided by her mentor, Patricia Moncrief, who offered financial and emotional support. Addison's father, Robert Sullivan, also stepped in with a modest loan, urging her to consider legal action. But Addison was disillusioned by the law as it applied to James's wealth and influence. She wanted to shield her child from a vindictive, power-hungry father rather than battle him for petty settlements or child support. Though Addison initially hoped that James would come to his senses, that he would choose her and their child over glitz and illusions, his phone calls became sparse, then ceased entirely. Months passed without any acknowledgement from James about the pregnancy. Addison was left alone to face her prenatal appointments, her anxieties, and her heartbreak. Weeks turned into months, and Addison discovered James was openly parading Charlotte around social events, introducing her as his partner both in business and in life. Tabloid headlines such as "Parker's new power duo" splashed across glossy pages. Addison's heartbreak transformed into a cold, focused resolve. She would survive without him. She would raise her child as a single mother. She refused to succumb to bitterness, but she harbored a deep resentment for the betrayal and for James's indifference toward their future son or daughter. Still, the heartbreak was only the beginning. Life had more trials in store for Addison, but it also had unexpected blessings. Far away from James's empire, Addison began to rediscover her sense of purpose. Pregnancy became a transformative experience, and she realized she had to stand strong for herself and for the little life growing inside her. She couldn't know that years later, fate would bring her back into James's orbit, armed with not just a child, but a shocking secret that would shatter the very foundation of the empire James had so ruthlessly built. Addison gave birth to a baby boy, whom she named Oliver. She didn't include James's last name on the birth certificate, nor did she inform him of the birth. Part of her ached for closure, a conversation, an apology, perhaps even a renewed attempt at fatherhood. But James's radio silence over the past several months had shattered any illusions of reconciliation. In the modest apartment she now called home, Addison worked freelance assignments for the Ledger, submitting investigative pieces under Patricia Moncrief's mentorship. The pay was minimal compared to James's fortune, but it was enough to cover rent and provide for Oliver. Whenever Addison felt her determination waver, particularly on nights when Oliver cried incessantly, and her exhaustion weighed on her like an anchor, she reminded herself of James's dismissive attitude, of how he had looked at her pregnancy like a burden. During these demanding months, Addison found unexpected allies. One was Marisol Castillo, her neighbor, a single mother raising two boisterous daughters. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, the two women bonded over the shared challenges of parenting alone. Marisol offered practical advice, from affordable childcare options to a local discount on groceries. Another was Addison's father, Robert, who would drive down from Rhinebeck every couple of weeks, cradling Oliver with a doting grandfather's pride and helping Addison fix various broken furniture items that came with the cheap apartment. Yet beneath her day-to-day responsibilities, Addison felt the heavy weight of heartbreak. The divorce was never formalized. James simply vanished from her life, seemingly more concerned with Charlotte and business expansions. Because Addison had left, James never filed any paperwork. Possibly, he assumed Addison would pursue alimony, but she stubbornly refused to cling to a marriage certificate in which the husband had no real interest. Over time, people stopped asking about James. Addison's close circle understood that she didn't want to talk about him, and acquaintances simply assumed the marriage was over. Meanwhile, James's empire soared to new heights. He relocated his headquarters to a shimmering skyscraper in downtown Manhattan, where Charlotte's PR mastery amplified his brand. High-profile interviews with financial magazines painted James as a philanthropic visionary, though Addison knew from her investigations that several of his property deals evicted long-term tenants to build luxury high-rises. Those who dared to criticize him found themselves drowned out by glowing coverage about his charitable contributions. Every once in a while, Addison's resolve faltered. She'd recall the early days of their marriage, the nights they spent dreaming about building something meaningful together, or the moments James would stroke her hair while she read him excerpts of her latest investigations. She wasn't naive. She understood that James had changed, but she also wondered if the man she once loved still lingered beneath that gilded exterior. Late at night, she'd watch Oliver sleep and entertain the painful thought, should she try to reach James so Oliver could know his father? That idea was often punctured the following morning by a fresh tabloid story. James and Charlotte's public escapades, attending art auctions, vacationing in the Caribbean, hosting lavish fundraisers, revealed a man intoxicated by fame and fortune. He never addressed Addison publicly, never spoke of the child she carried when she left. This was enough to remind Addison that James had effectively shut the door on fatherhood. Yet Addison pressed on, determined to create a bright future for her son. She spent hours at the public library, studying old property deeds and investigating potential fraud for the Ledger's next big expos. The piece she was working on could be a breakthrough, one that might catapult her into the upper echelons of journalism. Patricia believed Addison had the skill to uncover stories with real societal impact. She just needed her big break. That break arrived unexpectedly when Addison was assigned to investigate the financing of a sprawling commercial project in Midtown, a project with suspicious shell companies funneling money. As Addison dug deeper, she realized one of these shell companies was indirectly owned by none other than James Parker. Whether James was aware of the illegality or not, Addison discovered enough anomalies to suspect serious wrongdoing. A swirl of contradictory emotions stirred inside her. If she exposed James, she would potentially be tarnishing Oliver's father, though he'd never stepped up to that role. But Addison was a journalist first, and the truth was non-negotiable, especially if people were being deceived. In the midst of Addison's moral quandary, life threw another curveball. One sweltering summer afternoon, a phone call came while Addison was feeding Oliver mashed bananas. It was from a private investigator named Terence Bromfield, hired by an anonymous client. He wanted to verify Addison's address, her marital status, and Oliver's age. Addison's heart raced. She demanded to know who the client was, but Bromfield refused to disclose. After an anxious few days, Addison guessed that James was behind this. Perhaps Charlotte felt threatened by Addison's existence. Or maybe James was preparing to file for divorce, to sever any legal tie between them. Haunted by uncertainty, Addison resolved to expedite her investigation. She wanted to break the story before James or Charlotte could sabotage her. Simultaneously, she made a pivotal decision. If exposing James meant saving countless people from financial ruin, or worse, she had to follow through. Still, she worried about the repercussions for Oliver's future. In a perfect world, Addison imagined that someday James might change, realize the value of fatherhood, and reconnect. But that ideal was overshadowed by a sharper reality. Addison couldn't let sentimentality undermine her pursuit of the truth. Unbeknownst to Addison, a series of revelations and tragedies were about to unfold that would propel her right back into James's orbit, this time armed with more than heartbreak and resentment. Fate had a habit of bringing long-buried secrets to light, and Addison was about to learn that James Parker had even more at stake than she'd ever realized. 3 years passed in a whirlwind. Oliver learned to walk, then run, and then to clamber up chairs to reach cookies Addison tried to hide on the highest shelves. The toddler's energy lit up Addison's otherwise stressful life. Her investigative report on James's Midtown development scandal had been delayed. Editors at the Ledger worried that making accusations against a business magnate might open them to lawsuits. Addison's carefully compiled evidence lingered in editorial limbo. Meanwhile, James Parker rose further in society, culminating in a grand event. He was featured on the cover of Wealth and Influence magazine under the headline, "The Architect of American Prosperity." The fawning article depicted James as a bold innovator helping to rebuild dilapidated neighborhoods. Not a single mention was made of Addison. Indeed, James's narrative seemed deliberately curated to exclude any personal baggage. Charlotte was credited as his partner in PR and philanthropic pursuits, having launched Community Prosper, a charity that purported to invest in underprivileged communities, but in truth, Addison suspected it was yet another smokescreen for James's questionable financial dealings. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Addison received a phone call from a lawyer named Jonathan Hendricks. He was representing James Parker, but he sounded strangely polite and almost apologetic as he requested Addison's presence at an urgent meeting. Startled, Addison initially refused. She was done playing games. Then Hendricks mentioned that the matter was of a personal nature involving Addison's legal status and Oliver's well-being. Addison's journalistic curiosity flared. She decided to see what James's camp wanted, half expecting some settlement or hush-money check to keep her from prying further into the Midtown scandal. In a polished conference room at Hendricks and Porter LLP, Addison sat across from Hendricks while Oliver, fidgeting, played with crayons in a corner. The lawyer handed Addison a manila folder, which contained divorce papers. She scanned through the documents, noticing a notable clause. James was offering Addison a substantial sum enough to buy a comfortable home, pay for Oliver's education, and more under one condition. She agreed to sign a non-disclosure agreement, NDA, about their relationship and about any knowledge of James's business affairs. Addison's stomach twisted. With one signature, she could secure Oliver's future financially, but at the cost of her voice, her truth, and her investigative career. The hypocrisy was galling. James had ignored her and Oliver for years, and now he wanted to purchase her silence. She asked about Oliver's custody or support. The documents made no mention of custody arrangements. It was purely a financial transaction to wash James's hands of the past. Hendricks tried to soften the blow. Mr. Parker wants what's best for everyone. He believes this is fair compensation, the lawyer offered, in a carefully rehearsed tone. Fury flickered in Addison's eyes as she recalled James's indifference when he discovered she was pregnant. Now he was placing a dollar amount on their child's worth. She slammed the folder shut and left, resisting the urge to deliver a scathing monologue. For days, Addison brooded over the proposition. The money would transform Oliver's life, guaranteeing him opportunities Addison alone might struggle to provide. But Addison's conscience rebelled. She had built her career on exposing injustices, not enabling them. Signing the NDA felt like a betrayal of her principles. Ultimately, Addison decided she wouldn't sacrifice her integrity or her investigative work. She tore up the divorce papers in a burst of defiance. As far as she was concerned, James could keep his dirty money. Shortly thereafter, Addison took a leap of faith. She reached out to her editor, demanded that the Ledger move forward with publishing her findings on James's Midtown project. Though the paper's legal team remained cautious, Addison presented fresh evidence from a whistleblower documents that strongly indicated James had manipulated property values through shell companies, inflating land prices before funneling them back into his own accounts. Armed with these revelations, Addison's editor began to see the story's undeniable potential. The piece was slated for publication in 2 weeks. Addison felt emboldened, certain this expose could be her ticket to a reputable investigative platform and possibly the impetus for legal scrutiny against James. Yet, as if sensing the impending blow, James launched a media blitz. Charlotte orchestrated interviews that painted James as the philanthropic savior of urban housing. The timing was too perfect to be mere coincidence. James must have heard whispers that something big was coming. To Addison's surprise, a few days before the Ledger's publication date, a letter arrived in her mailbox with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note that read, "Don't trust everyone at the Ledger. Some are loyal to Parker." The message was cryptic, but Addison felt a surge of anxiety. Could Charlotte or James have infiltrated the newspaper's editorial staff? It seemed far-fetched, yet Addison couldn't ignore the possibility. In a move to protect her work, Addison made backup copies of her research and kept them on a separate USB flash drive. She confided in Patricia Moncrief, her trusted mentor, about the anonymous note. Patricia agreed to meet Addison secretly in a secluded cafe to discuss strategy. As they huddled over coffee, Addison explained her fears of sabotage. Patricia reassured her, asserting that the Ledger maintained the highest level of journalistic integrity. Still, Addison couldn't shake the feeling that James's reach extended further than anyone acknowledged. Meanwhile, Oliver, now almost 4, continued to blossom. He had Addison's inquisitive eyes and her determined spirit. Every night Addison read him bedtime stories, making sure he felt safe and loved, feelings that money couldn't buy. Yet in the back of her mind, Addison knew the storm was only beginning. She braced herself for whatever James might do. Once her expose went live publicly, Addison was about to become the journalist who took down America's golden real estate mogul. But privately, she would be the woman who exposed her estranged husband, the father of her child, for the fraud she believed him to be. Indeed, Addison had no idea just how far James and Charlotte would go to protect their empire. Nor did she anticipate that the next phone call she'd receive would change her life forever, setting into motion events that would bring her face to face with James again, this time in the darkest of circumstances. The phone call came on a chilly autumn evening. Addison had just finished tucking Oliver into bed when her cell phone buzzed with an unknown number. Expecting some telemarketer or perhaps another tip about James's business, Addison answered with cautious curiosity. The voice on the other end, trembling with urgency, belonged to Kevin Harrington, one of James's senior executives. He apologized for contacting her, acknowledging that it was unusual given their history. Then his words spilled out. "James is in the hospital. It's serious." Addison's heart skipped a beat. She struggled to reconcile the image of James, invincible, arrogant, always in control, with someone who could be laid low in a hospital bed. Kevin explained that James had been in a helicopter accident while traveling to inspect a remote development site. The pilot had misjudged the landing conditions. Charlotte was also on board. Both had survived, but James was in critical condition with possible spinal injuries. For a moment, Addison considered ending the call. After all, James had made his choice. But a flicker of compassion persisted, fueled partly by the memory of the man she had once loved, partly by the fatherless child sleeping in the next room. Kevin pleaded with Addison to come to Manhattan General Hospital. "He might not have long," he said quietly. Conflicted, Addison phoned her father, Robert, to watch Oliver. Then she hailed a taxi and rushed into Manhattan. The streetlights blurred as the cab navigated through evening traffic. Addison's mind swirled with old resentments and unspoken questions. What if James died? What about Oliver? How would they ever reconcile a child's knowledge of his father if he never got a chance to meet him? Upon arrival at the hospital's intensive care unit, Addison was directed to a waiting area where Charlotte sat with a bandaged head, her arm in a sling. Her eyes flashed with surprise and something akin to anger when she saw Addison. Charlotte rose slowly, as if commanding the entire room's attention, her posture guarded. "You have no business being here," Charlotte said, her voice trembling with both fear and hostility. "Kevin called me," Addison retorted, refusing to be intimidated. "He said James is in critical condition." Charlotte's gaze wavered momentarily. Then, as though reclaiming her dominion, she folded her good arm across her chest. "James wouldn't want you here," she insisted. Addison squared her shoulders. "I have a child with him. Whether you like it or not, that matters." Before their confrontation could escalate, a doctor approached, calling out Charlotte's name. Addison followed close behind. The doctor explained that James had sustained multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and a precarious spinal injury. The next 24 hours were crucial. A series of surgeries awaited him, each carrying significant risk. Addison felt an ache in her chest. Despite everything, she never wanted James to die like this alone, in pain, without any sense of reconciliation. Charlotte inquired about the best specialists, her tone dripping with desperation. The doctor assured her James was receiving top-of-the-line care. Then he turned to Addison, curious as to her relationship with the patient. Addison offered no details beyond a tense "I'm family." The doctor nodded and left, urging them to await further updates. Exhausted and emotionally raw, Addison collapsed into a chair in the corridor. She stared at the white tiles, the antiseptic smell of the hospital stinging her nostrils. She braced herself for a barrage of insults from Charlotte, but none came. Instead, Charlotte sat down a few seats away, silent. Finally, she spoke in a voice tinged with vulnerability. "If he doesn't make it, this empire, everything we built, it'll collapse." The board members will tear it apart like vultures. The statement struck Addison like a bucket of cold water. Even in this dire moment, Charlotte's first concern was the empire. It was a harsh reminder of the world James had chosen over Addison. But Addison also saw something else behind Charlotte's eyes: fear. For all her cunning, Charlotte faced the prospect of losing her golden ticket. At that moment, Addison realized she didn't want James's fortune or to watch him suffer. She simply wanted closure. For years she had envisioned James's eventual remorse. She had fantasized about him returning to her with apologies, or at least offering genuine fatherhood to Oliver. Now, faced with the real possibility of never having that chance, Addison felt a wave of sorrow. Night stretched into dawn, and Addison remained at the hospital. Charlotte dozed off in a chair, a nurse occasionally checking her bandages. Kevin Harrington appeared around 4 in the morning with coffee, looking fatigued. He hesitated before handing a cup to Addison, as if uncertain she would accept. Addison took it, thanking him under her breath. "This might be none of my business," Kevin began softly, "but I always felt it was wrong how James handled things with you." Addison eyed him warily. "Why are you telling me this now?" Kevin sighed. "Because I feel responsible. I saw him change over time. Money, it does strange things to people. I kept my head down, did my job, but I never liked the way he left you." And when Charlotte stepped into the picture, everything became more calculated, more ruthless. His confession didn't erase years of complicity, but Addison appreciated his honesty. She thought of Oliver, asleep at home, unaware of the drama unfolding. Kevin's mention of Charlotte's calculating nature led Addison to an uneasy realization. Charlotte was the gatekeeper of James's empire, the orchestrator behind his every PR stunt. Would she allow Addison, or even Oliver, to have any claim if James passed away? Amid these thoughts, Addison experienced a small surge of resolve. If James survived, she needed answers, needed closure for herself and for Oliver. If he didn't, Addison would bear the responsibility of telling Oliver about a father he'd never truly know. Steeling herself, Addison resolved to see James, if only for a moment. It might be her last chance. As dawn broke, Addison cornered a nurse and explained she was James's estranged wife, the mother of his child. "Please," she said softly, "just a few minutes." The nurse hesitated, then nodded, motioning Addison to follow. Behind the heavy door of the ICU, Addison found James in a private room. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, his face pale, his body swathed in bandages, Addison's throat constricted. This was not the powerful, arrogant man she'd known. He looked fragile, mortal. Unable to fight back tears, Addison approached his bedside, taking in every detail: the bruises on his cheeks, the steady beep of the heart monitor. She gently laid a hand on his forearm. He shifted slightly, eyes fluttering open for the briefest moment. Addison caught her breath, expecting him to speak or perhaps recoil in surprise, but he merely gazed at her in a haze of medication and pain. "James," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's Addison. I'm here." He made a faint noise, his lips trying to form words. She leaned in closer. Whether he recognized her or not was unclear. The medication and the injuries might have rendered him only partly conscious. But for that fleeting moment, Addison saw something akin to regret or longing in his eyes. Then his eyelids drifted closed again. Addison squeezed his hand, tears slipping down her cheeks. She recalled the young couple they once were, sharing hopes and dreams. It felt like another lifetime. In the sterile hush of the ICU, she found a quiet prayer on her lips. Let him live. Let them all have a chance to reckon with the past. She wasn't aware that outside, behind that closed door, Charlotte was listening. And that Charlotte, fueled by jealousy and an instinct for self-preservation, had her own shocking secret, one that threatened to upend everything Addison thought she knew about James, his business, and the child Addison had raised alone. Over the next week, James underwent multiple surgeries. The doctors painstakingly repaired internal injuries, stabilized his spine, and monitored him around the clock. Addison continued to visit daily, though she avoided Charlotte whenever possible, slipping into James's room for brief moments to witness the slow but promising improvement in his condition. Each day, he grew more alert, able to speak in short, raspy sentences. On one particularly tense morning, Addison stepped off the elevator to find a crowd of executives from Parker Enterprises waiting outside the ICU. Their faces were grim, the future of the company hinged on James's recovery, and they all seemed anxious. Charlotte, with her arm in a sling and a bruise across her temple, paced restlessly, barking instructions into her phone. She glared at Addison as soon as she noticed her, but Addison walked past, undeterred. Inside James's room, Addison found him propped up slightly in bed. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, they exchanged a moment of genuine, unspoken recognition. Addison approached cautiously, unsure if James would lash out or show gratitude. He spoke in a strained whisper. "You came." Addison nodded, unsure how to respond. "I heard about the accident. I wanted to see if you were all right." James tried to shift, grimacing with pain. "I'm not proud of how things ended," he managed, eyes flickering with shame. "I never reached out. I'm sorry." A lump formed in Addison's throat. She had rehearsed so many retorts over the years, yet they all evaporated in the face of James's vulnerability. Instead, she heard herself say, "I didn't come here for an apology, but it's good to finally hear it." They lapsed into silence until Addison mustered the courage to mention Oliver. "He's almost 4 now. He's an incredible boy. Bright, curious. He has your wit, I think." James's expression was a tapestry of regret and wonder. He closed his eyes momentarily, as if imagining the child he'd never known. "I'd like to meet him," he confessed. Addison nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "I won't promise anything, but maybe after you're out of here." Before they could delve deeper, Charlotte burst into the room, brandishing her phone. She wore a strained smile so fake that Addison almost scoffed aloud. "James, darling, the doctors said you need rest," she cooed. She shot Addison a glare that said, "Get out." Not wanting to cause further drama, Addison excused herself. Yet relief and caution warred within her. James wanted to meet Oliver, a step Addison had once dreamed of, but now she feared Charlotte's interference. Moreover, Addison still had her expose on hold, awaiting a final green light from the ledger. Could she release an article that might land James in legal jeopardy while he lay in a hospital bed? The next day, Addison remained uncertain about her next moves. She spent the morning taking Oliver to preschool, feeling guilty for being so preoccupied. As she returned to her apartment, her phone buzzed. It was Patricia Moncrief, her editor and mentor. "Addison, we have to publish the article," Patricia said without preamble. "Somebody leaked portions of your research to a rival paper. If we don't break this first, we might as well bury it." A cold dread settled in Addison's stomach. "How much do they have?" she asked. "Enough to run a compelling story, but not the complete evidence. We still have the upper hand, but we have to move quickly," Patricia replied. "We're going live on our website in 48 hours. Despite her personal entanglements, Addison understood the urgency. This was her job, her ethical duty. Yet it felt like she was about to detonate a bomb that would ravage James's life and potentially complicate Oliver's future relationship with him. After all, Addison wasn't just exposing a random corporate mogul. She was targeting her child's estranged father, who lay in a fragile hospital bed. Addison composed her thoughts, then drove to Manhattan General, determined to inform James of the impending article. She owed him that much. But upon arrival, she was stopped by two security guards stationed at the ICU. They insisted Addison was not on the approved visitor list anymore. Furious, Addison demanded to speak with James's doctor, only to be told that Charlotte Wilson had provided strict instructions to limit visitors to immediate family and board-approved personnel. Immediate family. The words stung Addison. "I'm his wife. Legally," she wanted to shout, but the guard refused to listen. Addison left, fuming. Charlotte had effectively seized control of James's hospital room and his narrative. The only consolation was that James had already indicated wanting to see Oliver, which meant Charlotte was now blocking his wishes. That evening, Addison wrestled with her conscience. The story needed to come out. If James was complicit in fraud, letting him off the hook wasn't an option. Yet, a part of her remembered the regret in James's eyes and wondered if he deserved a chance to make things right, not just for Oliver, but for all the people potentially harmed by his business dealings. Could James rectify the situation if given time? In the end, Addison realized withholding the truth was never part of her identity. Oliver deserved a mother who stood by her principles. She emailed Patricia to confirm the article would publish as scheduled. The day of publication arrived with a surge of adrenaline. Addison dropped Oliver off at preschool, then retreated to a nearby cafe to monitor the Ledger's website. At exactly noon, her expose went live, complete with scans of property deeds, financial transactions, and quotes from anonymous whistleblowers. Within minutes, social media was ablaze. Pundits weighed in, James's name began trending on every platform. Addison's phone started buzzing incessantly with calls, texts, and emails. She braced herself for backlash. Sure enough, the first call was from Kevin Harrington, his tone frantic. "Charlotte is furious. James is. Well, I'm not sure he even knows yet. Doctors aren't letting him watch the news. But you can expect legal threats from Parker Enterprises." Addison's chest felt tight. She offered no apology. "I did what I had to do," she said simply. By evening, Addison's expose had triggered a preliminary investigation by financial regulators. Parker Enterprises' stock prices plummeted. The board members scrambled to issue statements distancing themselves from James's personal dealings, while Charlotte assembled a team of crisis managers. Addison was both exhilarated and terrified by the impact of her report. Then came the phone call that shattered Addison's remaining composure. A voice she recognized instantly. Charlotte Wilson spoke with icy precision. "You think you've won, exposing James's business? You're not the only one with secrets, Addison. There's a child in the middle of all this, and you should be careful what you wish for." Addison's blood ran cold. "Don't threaten me or my son," she managed through clenched teeth. Charlotte's sneer was almost palpable. "You know nothing about the real James Parker. If you keep pushing, you'll regret it." A click, and the line went dead. Trembling, Addison sank into her couch. Over the years, Charlotte had orchestrated many cunning moves, but what could she possibly mean by referencing Oliver? Addison remembered the cryptic message she'd received months prior. "Don't trust everyone at the Ledger. Some are loyal to Parker." Could Charlotte be planning to smear Addison's name or cast doubt on Oliver's paternity? In that moment, Addison realized she might have awakened a sleeping dragon. Charlotte was cornered. Her entire public image, her lavish lifestyle, hinged on James's empire. Now that Addison's expose threatened that empire, Charlotte would likely retaliate. Addison vowed she wouldn't be intimidated. She had truth on her side, or so she believed. But as events would soon reveal, Charlotte's cryptic words carried a deeper meaning. A secret Addison could never have imagined would soon come roaring to the surface. forcing Addison and James to face not just the aftermath of financial scandal, but a revelation that could unravel every assumption Addison had about her child, her marriage, and the life she'd tried so hard to build. A week after Addison's expose went live, James finally recovered enough to watch the news from his hospital bed. The shocking revelations about shell companies and fraud rattled him, but he was more overwhelmed by Addison's betrayal, at least. That was how he first perceived it. Late one evening, he sent Addison a message. "I need to see you." She arrived, bracing herself for confrontation, only to find James frail and contrite. In a trembling voice, he confessed the truth that had fueled his betrayal, a genetic fertility issue. He'd always feared he couldn't father a child, and Charlotte had seized on that insecurity, planting doubts that Oliver was someone else's. Terrified of humiliation, James had let his pride and Charlotte's manipulations tear him away from Addison. Stunned, Addison realized that James's arrogance stemmed not just from selfishness, but from deep-seated fear of imperfection. Still, she raged at him for believing Charlotte's lies, for abandoning her when she needed him most. He apologized, tears in his eyes, vowing that if Oliver was truly his son, he would do anything to make amends. Before they could reconcile, Charlotte stormed into the room and tried to dismiss Addison, insisting James's empire was crumbling without her leadership. Fed up with Charlotte's schemes, James demanded she leave. Furious and humiliated, Charlotte turned her wrath on Addison, hinting at more secrets to come before slamming the door. Shaken, Addison promised James they'd arrange a paternity test. Whether it confirmed or refuted his doubts, she would have her answers and possibly a final chance at closure. As she left, Addison's heart churned with anger, sorrow, and an unexpected flicker of hope that, for Oliver's sake, the truth might finally set them all free. Days after James's confession, he and Addison submitted samples for a paternity test. James, still weary from surgery, approached this final piece of evidence with both dread and longing. When the results arrived, he opened the envelope with Addison by his side. Oliver was indeed his son. The wave of relief and regret that crossed James's face left Addison both vindicated and shaken. The truth confirmed what she had always known and what James had once let pride and doubt destroy. With Charlotte's lies exposed and her role in forging documents uncovered, Parker Enterprises forced her immediate resignation. In a desperate bid to preserve her own interests, Charlotte tried to discredit Addison with half-hearted threats. But the board stood firm, and regulators soon found themselves investigating not only James's questionable business dealings, but also Charlotte's deeper fraud. Disgraced and furious, she vanished from the public eye, leaving James to rebuild his legacy on his own terms. Now free from Charlotte's toxic influence, James focused on regaining his health and coming to terms with the damage he had caused both in his business empire and in his personal life. Instead of fighting the investigation from Addison's expose, he cooperated fully, selling off assets to pay restitution and distance himself from shady developments. Though some called his actions a desperate bid to save his reputation, Addison recognized genuine remorse behind them. It was a slow path to redemption, but at least it was honest. Once strong enough to leave the hospital, James invited Addison to bring Oliver for short visits, cautious introductions that left Oliver both curious and shy. While Addison watched them bond over toy cars and silly jokes, her emotions warred between relief and lingering bitterness. Her 4-year-old had spent his earliest years without a father, and no amount of guilt on James's part could erase that fact. Yet Oliver thrived on each new encounter, and Addison couldn't deny her son's happiness whenever James was around. As James settled into a simpler home life, exchanging marble floors and glittering chandeliers for modest furniture, Addison saw small glimpses of the man she had once loved. A part of her clung to anger over his past betrayal, but seeing him strive to make amends for Oliver's sake dulled the sharpest edges of her resentment. Over time, they established a peaceful routine, shared visits with Oliver, weekly calls to discuss his progress, and plenty of heartfelt apologies from James when old wounds resurfaced. When Addison received an offer to host a new investigative segment for a major TV network, she nervously told James she'd need more flexible co-parenting support. He readily agreed, expressing genuine pride in her journalistic achievements. In that moment, as they sat together finalizing plans for Oliver's schedule, Addison realized they had grown into something more than estranged exes. They were two people bound by a child, and perhaps by a renewed, if fragile, trust. Before leaving, James met Addison's gaze. "I know I can't undo the past," he said softly, "but I'll never stop trying to be the father Oliver deserves." Addison placed her hand on his, the hurt in her eyes tempered by the faintest smile. "We'll take it one step at a time." And so they did, tentatively forging a new path shaped by lessons learned, regrets acknowledged, and a future that, for Oliver's sake, might finally hold a glimmer of hope. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption. From James's arrogant rise to power, to Addison's courageous choice to walk away while pregnant, and ultimately to their unexpected reunion years later, this story proves that even the darkest secrets can come to light, and that healing is possible, no matter how deep the wounds. Will James and Addison finally seize their second chance at happiness and give Oliver the loving family he's always deserved? Or will old resentments threaten to tear them apart again? Pregnant wife confronts millionaire husband at a hotel bar after catching him with Mistress. A hushed tension filled the opulent bar at the Plaza Hotel, where glittering chandeliers shimmered over velvet seats and polished floors. There, near the gleaming marble counter, stood Anna, her heart thundering, her pregnant belly a silent testament to months of secrets and suspicions. She couldn't tear her eyes away from Daniel, her billionaire husband, who was leaning far too close to a woman in a figure-hugging red dress. A swirl of betrayal and fury surged through Anna's veins, compelling her to take a step forward. Voices in her mind warned her to run, but she couldn't. She had come too far to simply turn back now. Anna Calhoun married Daniel Calhoun 3 years ago in a lavish ceremony that lit up the society pages. Every detail had been meticulously planned, the grand hall decorated with over 100,000 white roses, the custom lace gown from Vera Wang, the multi-tiered cake that shimmered under chandeliers. Their union was celebrated like a fairy tale come to life, but Anna never quite believed in perfect fairy tales. She knew that behind the sparkle of wealth there could be long shadows of ambition, secrecy, and unspoken resentments. Before marrying Daniel, Anna was a small-town girl from Ohio. Her father worked at a local auto parts factory, and her mother taught second-grade children. Anna's ambition was to move to a bustling city, maybe become a journalist or writer, to share stories of courage and transformation. Meeting Daniel was the biggest transformation of her life. He was everything she had ever imagined: tall, charismatic, financially successful beyond reason. His business empire, Calhoun Industries, owned a chain of global tech firms, real estate investments, and even a few luxury brands. By the time Anna met him at an art fundraiser in Manhattan, Daniel had already claimed the title of billionaire and the attention of every socialite in New York. They had a whirlwind romance, exclusive dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, spontaneous trips to Europe in his private jet, and passionate nights in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. Yet even in those heady days, Anna sometimes felt a rift forming. Daniel was always on his phone, dealing with urgent matters, whispering about investor calls. At first, she attributed it to the demands of high-stakes business. But over time, the phone calls grew more secretive, the late-night meetings more frequent, and the explanations less convincing. When Anna discovered she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She hoped this would help them both reconnect and step away from the shadows that seemed to linger. But as her belly grew, Daniel seemed more distant than ever. Dinners at home became dinners alone. Business trips multiplied, and the rumors, those echoing whispers of a mistress, began to swirl among the staff of their penthouse. It was a housekeeper's accidental mention that first planted a seed of doubt in Anna's mind. There was talk of Daniel being seen at odd hours with a mysterious woman, a swirl of perfume clinging to his suits at times when he was allegedly just working late. She tried to confront Daniel, gently at first, but he brushed her off, blaming overwork and outside pressures. Anna wasn't satisfied, but she lacked concrete proof. With the pregnancy draining her energy, she buried her doubts, hoping her husband would come to his senses, or that her mind was simply exaggerating from hormones and stress. A love so strong couldn't just vanish, she convinced herself daily. She tried to recall the simple, genuine moments early in their relationship, nights of laughter and comfort, their shared dreams for a happy family. It was enough to keep her afloat, at least for a little while. One evening, Anna was in her study, once her writing nook, now more of a neglected corner, when the phone rang. Daniel had forgotten his personal phone at home. On the caller ID, an unfamiliar name flashed, Tessa. Something in Anna's chest tightened, a primal sense of dread. She answered. A female voice, sultry and self-assured, asked for Daniel. Anna struggled to keep her voice calm. "He's not here right now," Anna said. "May I ask who's calling?" "This is Tessa, his business associate," the woman replied. "We have a meeting scheduled in an hour. Just let him know I'll be waiting at the Golden Vine restaurant. He'll know what it's about." When Anna confronted Daniel about Tessa later, the expression on his face was fleeting, caught between guilt and feigned indifference. He insisted Tessa was just a new consultant he'd hired to help with a deal overseas. In typical Daniel fashion, he pivoted the conversation, making Anna feel childish for suspecting anything. But the weight in her chest refused to fade. As the weeks passed, more odd incidents surfaced. Jewelry receipts in Daniel's briefcase that didn't match anything Anna had ever seen. Cryptic texts on his phone that he shielded from view. He started wearing cologne she'd never smelled before. Where once he would come home from an overseas trip, eager to hold her, now he walked in, phone pressed to his ear, barely acknowledging her presence. The baby in her belly kicked more vigorously each time a new wave of doubt battered her heart, as if the little life inside her sensed the tension. Late one night, Anna found herself pacing the bedroom. She touched the framed photo from their wedding, her reflection glimmering in the glass. She remembered how safe she felt in Daniel's arms, how he promised to protect her from life's harsh winds. Yet here she was, uncertain, anxious, desperate for answers. She was pregnant and exhausted, but a fierce resolve flickered within her. She would find the truth, no matter the cost. The decisive clue came from someone Anna least expected to help, Daniel's younger sister, Alicia. While Alicia wasn't particularly close with Anna, they had had their share of frosty interactions at family gatherings. She had a streak of empathy for the unborn baby. Alicia worried about Anna's health under so much stress. With eyebrows furrowed, Alicia confessed that she overheard Daniel talking about meeting Tessa at the Plaza Hotel bar in New York City. He was apparently quite insistent on secrecy. Alicia suspected it wasn't the first time they'd met there. Anna's heart hammered. The Plaza Hotel was famous for its exclusivity. The bar, adorned with classic decor and a refined ambiance, was a hotspot for discreet high society meetups. If Daniel was meeting Tessa there, it wasn't for a simple business chat. Anna realized she had to see it with her own eyes. She wouldn't rest until she had the unfiltered truth. She waited for the right moment. Daniel mentioned a business meeting scheduled for Friday evening. His manner was evasive, and he declined to give more details. That was enough for Anna. She planned meticulously, rehearsing scenarios. One moment she felt confident, steeled by righteous anger. The next, she was consumed by heartbreak, wishing she could bury her head in the sand. But in the end, the baby's well-being fueled her determination. She needed to know if this marriage, this life she was building, was a lie. Friday evening arrived, carrying a cold wind that rustled through the streets of Manhattan. Anna stepped out of a taxi a block away from the plaza. She wore a simple black maternity dress that clung to her swollen belly. She felt every bit the wronged heroine in a tragic play, but she forced herself to keep going. The doorman recognized her from past events. She offered a tight-lipped smile and prayed he wouldn't make a fuss. Luckily, he didn't. She glided into the lobby, heart pounding like thunder. Light from the grand chandeliers sparkled across the marble floors, reminiscent of a star-filled sky. She could barely hear the piano music in the background over the roar in her ears. Every footstep echoed like a final countdown to the confrontation. She found her way to the bar, a dimly lit space with plush seating and a sophisticated hush. She paused near a large palm plant, scanning the room. Then she saw them, Daniel and Tessa, at a small corner table, heads bent close, a bottle of expensive champagne half consumed. Tessa's laughter cut through the hush like a blade, confident and almost mocking. Her hand rested on Daniel's wrist. The spark in his eyes, so foreign to Anna these days, made Anna's stomach churn. Anna nearly turned around, wanting to escape the agony, but something in her refused to run. The baby stirred, giving her courage. She stepped forward, each step measured. She reached their table, her shadow falling over the pair, who looked up in surprise. Daniel's expression twisted into panic, while Tessa's red lips curled into a subtle, knowing smile. The moment felt suspended in time. Anna realized every fear, every suspicion had been warranted. She inhaled deeply and spoke, her voice trembling but resolute. "Daniel, I see your business meeting is going well." Daniel stood so abruptly that his chair screeched across the marble floor. Eyes from other guests darted toward the commotion. Tessa, with an unsettling composure, calmly sipped from her glass. Anna could see the condescension in her gaze, as though Tessa relished the scene. "Anna," Daniel began, hands raised in a gesture of surrender. Why are you here?" Anna tightened her grip on her purse strap. Her voice was cold and steady. "I think the better question is why you're here." She looked pointedly at Tessa, then at the half-empty champagne bottle. The golden bubbles sparkled like shattered trust, and with her, no less, the hush in the bar intensified. Daniel's face flushed. Tessa slowly stood, adjusting the folds of her glamorous red dress. She wore an emerald necklace that glimmered in the low light, a necklace that Anna recognized from a suspicious jewelry receipt she'd once found. "I don't think we need a scene," Tessa said lightly, looking around as if annoyed by the attention. Her confidence stoked Anna's anger. Tessa turned to Daniel with a smirk. "Maybe we should go somewhere else." "You're not going anywhere," Anna interjected, leveling her gaze at both of them. The baby shifted in her belly, an echo of the turmoil raging inside her. "Daniel, explain. Right here, right now." Daniel glanced around at the onlookers. He lowered his voice, attempting to steer them toward a more private corner. But Anna refused to move. She wanted the truth, wanted it in public, if that's what it took to finally shatter the lies. When Daniel didn't speak, Tessa decided to fill the silence. "Anna, darling," she purred, "I'm sure this is all very confusing for you in your condition. But Daniel and I have business that involves negotiations, consultations, that sort of thing. He just wanted a quieter place to talk. That's all." Anna bristled at Tessa's condescending tone. "It's quite a negotiation," she spat. "Necklaces, champagne, an intimate corner booth. Really, I'd love to hear the details of this lucrative contract." She turned again to Daniel. Is this where all your late nights and secretive phone calls have gone? Is she your strategy to expand your empire? Daniel pressed his lips into a grim line, cheeks burning with shame. He mumbled that they should leave the bar to discuss things privately, but Anna's fury was unstoppable. Go on, she demanded, tears threatening to escape. I want to hear you say it. Tell me that what I'm seeing is just business. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. The tension drew audible gasps from nearby patrons. Anna's heart pounded with the velocity of betrayal. She realized in that moment how deeply she had hoped to be wrong. Even confronted with evidence, she'd clung to the desperate belief that there might be a misunderstanding. But Daniel's silence roared the truth. Her husband, the one person she trusted above all else, had shattered her world. Slowly, she felt the heat of her fury give way to an icy numbness. She placed a protective hand over her belly. It was a subtle gesture, but it spoke volumes. She might be broken, but she wasn't alone. Life thrived within her, and she would protect it at any cost. Tessa took a step back, eyes flicking to Daniel. I think I'll leave you two to figure this out. Daniel, call me when you... Don't you dare walk away, Anna snapped, surprising even herself with the force in her voice. Not until I get an answer. She was tired of being brushed aside, tired of letting others dictate her life. If Tessa thought she could simply slip away, she was mistaken. Under the weight of her glare, Tessa paused. An uneasy silence stretched. Daniel opened and closed his fists at his sides, clearly struggling to maintain composure in front of the growing crowd. Anna, Daniel whispered, his eyes pleading. Let's go upstairs. We can reserve a private suite here at the plaza, just to talk. Please, not here. You've done plenty here already, Anna said, voice trembling with a mix of heartbreak and rage. No. Whatever you have to say it now. In front of me, this crowd, and your mistress. A hush blanketed the room as Daniel inhaled a shaky breath. For a moment, guilt glimmered in his eyes. Then, as if a dam had burst, words began tumbling out. He admitted he'd been seeing Tessa for a few months, initially for business advice. One deal led to after-meeting drinks, which led to something more. He hadn't meant for it to happen, but it did. He was ashamed. He claimed he still loved Anna and wanted to make things right, but he was in so deep, he didn't know how to pull himself out. Anna stood there, trembling, tears burning behind her eyes. She felt the eyes of the bar upon her, some pitying, some judging. She wanted to scream, to collapse, to rage at the unfairness of it all. Instead, she managed a choked whisper, after meeting drinks. You had an affair while I carried our child. Daniel flinched. Tessa, to her credit, seemed momentarily uncomfortable. Or perhaps that was just Anna, imagining a flicker of shame. Tessa's mask of confidence never slipped far. I didn't expect things to go this far, Tessa offered, as though that was any consolation. Anna couldn't bear to stand there any longer. She turned on her heels, ignoring Daniel's pleas to wait. She hurried out of the bar, the clack of her heels echoing loudly in her ears. The baby shifted again, and Anna fought back the tears until she was safely out of sight. Only once she reached the lobby restroom did she let the sobs break free. Anna locked herself in a spacious stall and let her tears flow freely. She pressed her head against the cool tile wall, feeling a world of anguish crashing over her. The memory of Tessa's smirk, Daniel's faltering excuses, and the pitying glances of strangers all merged into a suffocating cloud. She looked down at her swollen belly. The baby was due in a few months. We're going to be okay, she whispered, voice trembling. She had to protect her child, but how? Her entire life, her marriage, her trust, her sense of security was unraveling. She realized this was more than just an affair. It was a betrayal of vows, of a foundation they had promised to build together. Anger flared up once again, mingling with desperation. She wiped her tears and pulled her phone from her purse, ignoring the chaos of missed calls and frantic messages from Daniel. She dialed Alicia's number. "I caught him," Anna managed, voice unsteady. Alicia's gasp on the other end was all the confirmation she needed. Alicia offered to come pick her up, but Anna declined. She wanted no more humiliation for the night, no more public scenes. With a shaky determination, she left the restroom and headed for the elevator banks. If Daniel wanted to talk privately, she would give him the chance, if only to secure clarity for herself and for her unborn child. She pressed the call button, eyes catching her reflection in the mirrored wall, puffy eyes, smudged makeup, heartbreak etched into every line of her face. The elevator dinged open. She stepped inside, fists clenched. She would face Daniel, but on her terms. And she would find out just how deep his lies ran. On the 15th floor of the plaza, Daniel had hastily booked a suite. A trembling bellhop led Anna to a door, his eyes darting nervously between Anna's tear-streaked face and the plush hallway. He seemed to sense the tension and hurried away the moment he set down her suitcase of belongings that she had spontaneously grabbed from the penthouse before following Daniel. Anna paused outside the door, breath uneven. She knew Daniel was inside, waiting. She could almost feel his guilt seeping through the walls. But she had to do this. After a few seconds, she slid the keycard through the lock and entered. Daniel stood near the large bay window overlooking Fifth Avenue. City lights twinkled like fallen stars, a stark contrast to the turmoil within the room. He turned, eyes red-rimmed. He looked like he wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Anna shut the door softly behind her. She kept her back against it, as though needing physical support. "You wanted privacy," she said in a low tone. "Now we have it. Talk." Daniel cleared his throat. "Anna, I'm sorry. I never intended to hurt you. Things just spiraled. Tessa was helping me with a new tech expansion in Europe. We started spending time together, and it got complicated." "That's all?" Anna asked bitterly. "You got bored with your pregnant wife at home, so you decided to spend time with another woman?" Shame flickered in his eyes. "That's not how it started. But yes, that's where it ended up. And it was wrong. I hate myself for it." He stepped closer, but Anna held up a hand to stop him. "What about me? About us?" Her voice cracked. "Did you consider what this would do to me? Or to our child?" Daniel swallowed hard. "I was an idiot. I got caught up in the excitement, the secrecy. But it meant nothing, Anna. I swear. I care about you. I care about our baby." "Sure," Anna snapped. "When did you plan to mention the jewelry you bought her? Or the private dinners? Or the champagne in that bar? Because it sure looked like it meant something. Or were you going to wait until one accidentally walked in on you again?" He faltered, unable to produce a decent excuse. Anna felt a wave of nausea. The emotional stress, combined with her pregnancy, was overwhelming. She sank into an armchair, pressing a hand to her belly. Instantly, Daniel rushed to her side, concern flashing in his eyes. "Don't touch me," she hissed, though she was grateful to be seated. "You made your choices. Now deal with the consequences." For a moment, Daniel stood helpless, arms hovering as if wanting to support her. His voice was raw when he finally spoke. "I love you, Anna. This was a mistake, a terrible, regrettable mistake. But I need a chance to fix this. I can break it off with Tessa immediately. I'll do anything you want. Just, please don't leave me." Anna stared at him, disbelief roiling in her gut. "You think it's that easy? Just end it with Tessa, and everything goes back to normal?" She let out a hollow laugh. "You lied to me for months. You made me question my sanity when I suspected you. You forced me to catch you red-handed for you to even admit the truth. You think I can just forget that?" Daniel's face fell, and tears shimmered in his eyes. He started to speak, but Anna held up a finger. She needed to say her piece. Marriage is built on trust, and you've broken that trust in the cruelest way possible while I'm carrying our child. Even if I wanted to forgive you, I'm not sure I could. It hurts too much." A strangled sob escaped Daniel. In all the time Anna had known him, she had never seen him so vulnerable. He was a billionaire, used to controlling outcomes and paying his way out of problems. But here, in this suite, with the city lights behind him, he was just a man facing the wreckage of his actions. Anna felt the faint stirring of pity, but overshadowing that was rage, heartbreak, and a fierce maternal instinct to shield her unborn baby from further pain. "I need time," she whispered, voice heavy with exhaustion. "I need space to think. So many months you were with her. I don't know how to process that. I don't even know if I can." Daniel reached out a trembling hand. "I'll give you whatever you need. Please, let me make this right. I'll cut Tessa out. I'll see a counselor. His words tapered off as Anna shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It might be too late for that," she said softly, then rose from the chair. Before Daniel could protest, she walked toward the door. "I'm going home. Alone." He called out her name, but Anna walked down the corridor without looking back, stepping into an elevator that felt like a confessional booth. As the door slid shut, she wasn't sure if she was leaving just the suite or the life she and Daniel had built, because it was painfully clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Anna spent the night at their penthouse guest room, locking the door to keep Daniel out. She wanted distance, but ironically, her mind was racing through every detail of the confrontation, refusing to let her rest. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages from Daniel, apologies, promises, pleas. She stared at them through bleary eyes, unsure if the man she once adored existed anymore. The next morning, Alicia arrived unannounced, letting herself in with the spare key. Anna was still in her nightgown, dark circles under her eyes. Alicia immediately enveloped her in a hug. It was the first act of genuine kindness Anna had felt in what seemed like ages, and it nearly broke her resolve. She wept into Alicia's shoulder, words tumbling out about how the affair had started, how Tessa was intimately involved in Daniel's new business projects, and how everything felt irreparably shattered. Alicia stroked her hair and listened patiently. "I had a bad feeling," Alicia murmured. "Daniel's been so secretive, even with me. I wish I'd told you sooner. I'm sorry." Anna pulled away, wiping her tears. "It's not your fault. Daniel made his choice. I don't know how to handle it." Alicia hesitated, then admitted, "There's more you should know. I didn't mention it because I wasn't sure, but I suspect Tessa isn't just a random consultant. She's been linked to other powerful men, and word is she uses her relationships to gain control in business deals. There are rumors that she blackmails them." Anna's stomach lurched. "Blackmail? You think Daniel?" Alicia sighed. "I don't know, but Tessa's not the type to let a billionaire slip through her fingers without some gain, especially if it ends badly." This revelation weighed on Anna like a boulder. The baby kicked, as if sensing her tension. She realized that the nightmare might stretch beyond personal betrayal into scandal, threats, public humiliation. Could Tessa have planned all this, seeing Daniel as a ticket to wealth and power? At that moment, Daniel knocked softly on the guest room door. "Anna? Alicia? Can I come in?" Anna looked to Alicia, who gave a subtle nod. Anna cracked open the door. Daniel stood there, looking disheveled, eyes rimmed with red. He glanced at Alicia but focused on Anna. "We need to talk. It's urgent." He inhaled sharply. "I got word this morning that Tessa's threatening to leak details of our relationship to the media unless I pay her a large sum. She also hinted at some damaging files, some corporate deals that she claims could ruin my reputation. I swear I didn't know about any blackmail. She's never asked for money until now. But apparently she's recorded conversations, has photos. Anna, if this gets out, it could ruin everything. Anna's head spun. Alicia shot her a pointed look. This was exactly what she'd feared. Anna braced herself, swallowing the bitter taste of betrayal. Her voice was icy. "So now you want my help?" After humiliating me in front of half of New York, Daniel wiped a hand over his face. "I deserve that. But yes, I need your help. I can't handle this alone," and his gaze flickered to Anna's stomach. "I want to make sure our child doesn't grow up with a father in disgrace. I know you might not want to be with me anymore, but please, at least help me face this problem." A swirl of conflict tore through Anna. Part of her wanted to say no, to let Daniel stew in the mess he created. But she knew the scandal would drag her down as well and possibly harm the baby. Reluctantly, she nodded. "We'll talk, but don't expect forgiveness." Seated around the living room table, Anna, Alicia, and Daniel pored over the text messages Tessa had sent. The demands were explicit. A $5 million payment transferred discreetly to an offshore account in exchange for her silence. She threatened to leak incriminating pictures and audio to tabloids if Daniel refused. There was a mention of a tech competitor who would love to see Daniel's empire crumble. It was a twisted labyrinth of threats, secrets, and potential ruin. Anna felt sick reading Tessa's smug words. "She's basically using your affair as leverage to blackmail you," she said, voice shaking. "You gave her everything she needed, Daniel. How could you be so careless?" He bowed his head. "I was blinded by lust, by stupidity. I never thought she'd do this." "Well, she did," Alicia snapped. "So what's the plan? Pay her? Go to the police? Try to reason with her?" Daniel stared at the text messages, despair etched into his features. Paying her might only encourage more demands. Going to the police would make this public and a huge scandal. If she really has incriminating material about my business deals, it could trigger an investigation. My investors would pull out. The board would lose faith. We could lose billions. Anna's frustration peaked. "So your primary concern is your business?" He lifted his eyes, desperation and regret mingling. "No, I'm worried about us, about you and the baby. I know I messed up, but I still have responsibilities to everyone who works at my companies, to our employees and shareholders. If Tessa's threats are real, a scandal of that magnitude could destroy countless livelihoods. I need to handle this carefully." Anna exhaled heavily, forcing herself to remain calm. "Fine. So what do we do?" They brainstormed. Alicia suggested contacting a top-notch security firm. Anna recommended gathering any evidence they had that could discredit Tessa. Daniel hesitated, worrying that might spur Tessa to release her dirt sooner. Eventually, they decided to meet Tessa on neutral ground, a private law office under the guidance of Daniel's legal counsel, to see if they could negotiate a resolution without succumbing to blackmail or inciting further wrath. Anna felt her heart pounding as they arranged the meeting for the next day. Part of her still reeled from the personal betrayal. Now she was thrown into corporate intrigue that could overshadow everything else. She realized with dismay that Tessa hadn't just hurt her marriage, she had inserted herself into the very framework of Daniel's world, and by extension, Anna's world too. The next day, Anna arrived at the high-rise law firm with Alicia and Daniel. A team of attorneys awaited them in a gleaming conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Tessa was scheduled to appear in an hour. The tension was palpable. Anna sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, hands clasped over her belly. She wished she were anywhere else. She scanned the array of serious suits, Daniel's top corporate lawyer, a crisis manager who specialized in high-profile scandals, and a private investigator discreetly situated in a corner. Everyone murmured in hushed voices, analyzing possible outcomes. The clock ticked ominously until the moment Tessa swept in, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit and exuding an air of supreme confidence. She didn't come alone. Her own attorney, a sharp-faced woman with a briefcase, followed close behind. Tessa's eyes locked onto Daniel, then darted to Anna. A flicker of something akin to contempt passed over her features. "Shall we sit?" Tessa said coolly, gesturing to the table. Her attorney placed a stack of documents before them. "We can keep this simple. I have what I have. You have the funds you have. Let's not complicate matters." Anna's anger burned. She wanted to scream at Tessa for daring to speak so casually after everything she'd done. But she kept silent, letting Daniel's lawyers take the lead. They questioned the validity of Tessa's supposed evidence, demanded proof. Tessa smirked and played an audio snippet on her phone. Daniel's voice discussing sensitive information about an upcoming merger, coupled with flirtatious banter. It was enough to make Anna's stomach churn, and enough to prove Tessa did have leverage. The negotiation spiraled into a tense standoff. Tessa demanded immediate payment. Daniel's team insisted on partial disbursement only after Tessa signed a non-disclosure agreement and handed over all evidence. Tessa's lawyer coolly retorted that a single payment was non-negotiable, or the media would receive a juicy scandal. Anna fought the urge to slam her fist on the table. Instead, she said quietly, "Tessa, why are you doing this? You already had Daniel. You had the affair. Isn't that what you wanted?" Tessa glanced at Anna, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "What I want is to be compensated for my time and expertise. This is business, Anna. Don't take it so personally. Daniel and I had a relationship, yes, but that's not the real story here. The real story is the power I hold, power you were never going to have." Daniel clenched his jaw, about to respond, but Anna's gentle but firm voice cut him off. "You talk about power as though it's everything, but real power isn't about money or blackmail. It's about respect, loyalty, empathy, things you clearly know nothing about." Tessa's eyes flickered with disdain, but she stayed silent. Her lawyer, however, pressed the matter, returning to the demands. Hours ticked by. Negotiations punctuated by tense silences, phone calls, half-hearted compromises. In the end, no agreement was reached. Tessa refused to budge on her single-payment ultimatum. Daniel's lawyers refused to release such a vast sum without guaranteed destruction of all evidence. As Tessa rose to leave, she shot a parting remark, chilling and succinct. "You have 48 hours to decide, Daniel. After that, the tapes go public. And trust me, once they do, your entire world will crumble." Then she swept out, leaving the conference room in a state of shock. Night fell, and the law office cleared out. Daniel, Alicia, and Anna remained, quietly discussing next steps with the crisis manager, a man named Robert Gaines. He laid out the stark reality. If Tessa released the incriminating evidence, Daniel's personal and professional reputation would be in shambles. Investors would flee, lawsuits could ensue, and the scandal would ripple into Anna's life, their unborn child's future, and every philanthropic endeavor the Calhoun name was tied to. Alicia fumed, pacing back and forth. "She's bluffing." "She must be bluffing," she insisted, though her tone lacked conviction. Daniel ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not sure. Even if half of it is bluff, the other half is still damaging." Anna rubbed her temples, exhaustion gripping her. "What do we do, Robert?" Robert adjusted his tie, the strain of the day etched on his face. "My recommendation is to gather any counter-evidence or to secure an injunction against Tessa, though that process could take time. Alternatively, if you believe Tessa truly won't budge, paying her might be your quickest path out, though ethically. I never recommend capitulating to blackmail." Anna frowned. The idea of simply handing over millions to the woman who wrecked her marriage made her stomach churn. But the stakes were terrifying. She could already imagine tabloids running front-page headlines, "Billionaire's affair exposed," "Pregnant wife betrayed." She imagined the paparazzi hounding her. The baby. The thought filled her with dread. She turned to Daniel, her voice weary. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about our child. If Tessa goes public, that scandal will follow our baby forever." Daniel's face tightened. "I know, and that's what scares me most." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We have 48 hours. Let's see if we can find a way to discredit her. If we can prove she's blackmailed others, or if her evidence is doctored, we might weaken her position." "Robert, can you get your investigator on that?" Robert nodded. "I'll start immediately." "Good," Daniel said. "And if it fails, we'll decide if paying her is a necessary evil." Anna and Alicia exchanged worried looks. This was not a simple negotiation, not a typical business deal. A wave of despair washed over Anna. She recalled the day she said "I do" to Daniel, believing in a bright future. Now, just a short time later, she was haggling with lawyers and crisis managers, dealing with the fallout of an affair she never dreamed possible. Yet, in the darkest corner of her heart, Anna felt a flicker of resolve. She wasn't just a victim. She was a mother. And for the sake of her child, she would find a way to navigate this hellish predicament, even if it meant facing unimaginable confrontations. Over the next day, Robert's investigator unearthed a trove of rumors tying Tessa to past blackmail attempts. However, most of those cases seemed carefully buried or settled out of court. No one wanted to go on record against her, likely fearing further exposure. Desperate, Anna took a different approach. She reached out to a source from her past, an old friend named Cora, who now worked as a journalist for the New York Times. Cora was known for her investigative tenacity. They met secretly at a small cafe in Midtown, far from the glitz of Daniel's usual haunts. Sitting across from Cora in a quiet booth, Anna explained the situation. She recounted Tessa's threats, the affair, the blackmail. She hadn't intended to share so many personal details, but she trusted Cora's discretion. Cora listened gravely, jotting notes in a small leather notebook. "This Tessa sounds like a professional extortionist," Cora said. "I might be able to tap some sources, see if there's anything I can dig up that's not publicly known. If I find something, it might help you turn the tables." Anna breathed a shaky sigh of relief. "Thank you. Just, please keep my identity under wraps. I don't want a bigger scandal." Cora reached across the table, squeezing Anna's hand gently. "I promise, I'll do what I can." Parting ways, Anna felt marginally hopeful. But as the hours ticked closer to Tessa's 48-hour deadline, anxiety gnawed at her. Daniel's entire team was on high alert. Alicia hovered near Anna like a protective sister, while Daniel immersed himself in strategy meetings. Late that evening, Cora called Anna. Her voice was tense. "Anna, I dug around. It seems Tessa has ties to a known corporate saboteur. She's done this routine before: lure wealthy men, gather secrets, threaten them, or feed info to business rivals for profit." A chill coursed through Anna. "So it's definitely bigger than just an affair." "Absolutely," Cora confirmed. "She's systematically targeted men who oversee lucrative deals. There's a rumor that she's connected to Winston Mackey, the head of a rival tech conglomerate. If that's true, she might be funneling your husband's secrets directly to him, or using them to manipulate Daniel into making bad decisions that favor Mackey's interests." Anna's mind whirled. Winston Mackey was a major competitor in Daniel's sphere. If Tessa was working with him, the stakes were even higher. Daniel's empire might not just suffer from scandal, it could be systematically dismantled. "Thank you, Cora," Anna managed. "This is huge." "Use it wisely," Cora advised, "and carefully. Armed with Cora's information, Daniel's crisis team launched into overdrive. If Tessa was feeding secrets to Winston Mackey, that constituted industrial espionage. They could threaten Tessa with a lawsuit or even criminal charges if she was found complicit. But they needed proof, and time was running out. The atmosphere in the penthouse felt electric with tension. Anna's phone pinged with a text message from Tessa, a mocking reminder of the deadline. Now just 12 hours away, Alicia prowled the hallways, chewing her nails and cursing under her breath. Daniel retreated to his study with phone calls, trying to gather any intel on Mackey's potential involvement. Just before midnight, Robert, the crisis manager, announced they had enough circumstantial evidence to confront Tessa. While not a smoking gun, it might be enough to scare her into backing down or at least negotiating more favorably. Anna's stomach twisted with dread and morning sickness. She wished none of this was happening. She wished she could be a normal, expectant mother, worried about baby clothes and nursery colors, not blackmail and corporate sabotage. But fate had dealt her this hand, and she resolved to see it through. Strangely, Tessa insisted on meeting again at the Plaza Hotel bar. It was as if she reveled in the very place where Anna caught them. The irony wasn't lost on Anna. But Daniel's team agreed, hoping the public space would discourage Tessa from dramatic outbursts. When Anna arrived, her heart thundered with painful familiarity. The same chandeliers twinkled overhead, the same plush seating, but everything felt colder, sharper. She found Tessa sipping a martini in the corner booth, completely at ease. Her lawyer was absent this time, a power move to appear more personal, no doubt. Daniel, Robert, and Alicia joined Anna. Tessa raised an eyebrow, glancing over the group. "I take it you've decided to pay, then?" Daniel slid into a seat across from her. "Actually, we have some new information. We know you've been in contact with Winston Mackey. Sharing corporate secrets is corporate espionage. We have enough to file charges if you release anything you claim to have. And those charges could put you away for a long time." Tessa's smirk wavered, only slightly, but Anna caught it. "I don't know what you're talking about," Tessa replied, tossing her hair dismissively. Yet a flicker of uncertainty danced in her eyes. Robert pressed a folder to the table. Emails, phone logs, bank transfers. "You've been in discussions with a shell company that leads directly back to Mackey. If you expose any private data about Calhoun Industries, we'll have proof you did so with criminal intent." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "So what's this? A bluff? Try us." Alicia shot back, her voice ice cold. Anna watched Tessa's face carefully. Beneath that veneer of confidence, Anna spotted fear. The blackmail scheme was built on her advantage, an advantage that had now evaporated. She had power only if Daniel was scared, but now he had evidence that could ruin her. For a moment, Tessa seemed to calculate her next move. Then, with a sigh, she leaned back, swirling her martini. "Fine. You've done your homework, so let's talk real numbers." Daniel blinked. "Numbers? We just told you we can take this to court if you try anything." Tessa chuckled humorlessly. "And you'll cause a scandal in the process, right? You think the press won't cover a corporate espionage suit? Your dirty laundry will be aired out anyway. My guess is you still want this buried. So how about a reduced fee for my silence? 2 million. Not 5. I'll sign whatever agreement you want, and we all walk away unscathed." Anna felt her blood boil. Tessa was incorrigible, shifting tactics the moment she lost leverage. She was still demanding a fortune for secrecy. Robert coughed, turning to Daniel. This was the moment of decision. Fight and risk everything in a messy trial, or pay and end it quietly. Daniel looked at Anna, helplessness etched in his eyes. She knew what this meant. If Tessa agreed to keep silent, the scandal might be contained. The baby could be protected from a media circus. But it also meant letting Tessa win, to some extent. Anna's heart pounded with conflicting emotions. She didn't want Tessa to profit from her betrayal, yet the baby's future weighed heavily. Finally, Daniel spoke, voice measured. 2 million in exchange for all copies of the evidence, the NDA, and the guarantee of total silence. If you so much as utter my name to the press, we release our evidence of your espionage attempts. Understood? Tessa downed the last of her martini. Understood. I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers. Anna clenched her fists, holding back a storm of emotions. She hated that Tessa was getting away with so much, but she needed to protect herself, her child, and perhaps even Daniel's employees, who depended on his company's stability. The moral compromise stung like a fresh wound. After the confrontation, Tessa left with a triumphant smirk, but not without handing over a flash drive. She claimed it held everything: photos, audio, videos. Robert promised to verify it meticulously, ensuring Tessa wasn't holding back additional copies. Anna stood with Daniel near the bar's entrance, feeling drained and hollow. Alicia gave them space, stepping aside to make a phone call. The bartender discreetly avoided eye contact. Sensing the gravity, Daniel let out a trembling breath. I'm sorry it came to this. Paying her, it feels wrong. Anna nodded wearily. It is wrong, but we do what we have to, I suppose. Silence fell. Anna placed a hand on her belly, her thoughts swirling. She was relieved the immediate threat was contained, but heartbreak remained. The affair, Tessa's cruelty, the blackmail, it all left a permanent scar. Daniel began, hesitating. I want you to know none of this was worth it. If I could turn back time, I'd give anything to fix what I broke between us. Anna stared at the chandelier overhead. For a moment, she pictured the wedding day again, the promised forever. Then Tessa's face intruded, mocking her naivete. Daniel, she said softly, this doesn't magically erase what happened. Even if Tessa vanishes, the pain remains. I don't know if I can forgive you. He bowed his head. I understand. A long pause lingered. Anna finally mustered a flicker of compassion. What happens to us now? He looked at her with desperate hope. We try therapy. We rebuild trust, if you'll let me. I'm not asking for miracles, just a chance to prove. I'm not the man Tessa made me out to be. Please. Anna's throat constricted. She didn't answer immediately. She wanted to believe there was a path forward, especially for their child, but the wounds were too raw. I need time, she whispered. We'll see. Life settled into an uneasy routine. The immediate crisis with Tessa was resolved. Lawyers finalized the NDA and wire transfer. Robert's team verified the flash drive's contents before placing them in secure storage. For now, Tessa was gone, but the emotional wreckage remained. As the weeks passed, Anna tried to distance herself from the heartbreak. She attended prenatal checkups, focusing on the growing life inside her. Occasionally, Daniel accompanied her, offering quiet support, but Anna kept him at arm's length. Then, in a twist of fate that felt like cosmic retribution, Daniel's businesses took a series of hits unrelated to Tessa. A global economic downturn battered stock prices. A key investor withdrew from a major project at the last minute. Lawsuits unrelated to the scandal emerged, claiming patent infringements in one of Calhoun Industries' tech subsidiaries. It was a perfect storm, hitting Daniel from all sides. Anna watched as Daniel scrambled to keep the company afloat. Board members questioned his leadership. Rumors of the near scandal with Tessa spread quietly among a few insiders, eroding confidence further. Some whispered that Daniel had lost his edge, that he'd become too distracted by personal drama to steer the empire effectively. Despite the tension between them, Anna felt a pang of sympathy. She saw him come home late, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, the once confident swagger gone. But part of her also recognized this as a form of karma. He had betrayed his marriage, and now fate was punishing him in ways neither of them could have foreseen. One evening, as Daniel sat in his home office, Staring at financial spreadsheets with despair, Anna entered quietly. She'd brought tea, a small gesture of peace. He glanced up, surprised. "Hey," he said, voice husky from sleepless nights. She offered a faint smile, placing the cup on his desk. "Chamomile. Thought you might need something calming." He sighed gratefully, taking a sip. "Thanks." Anna hesitated, unsure how to proceed. "I heard about the layoffs. That must be tough." He nodded, eyes clouded with guilt. "It is. I hate letting people go. But if we don't cut costs, the company could collapse entirely." A wave of compassion swept over Anna. Despite everything, she remembered the side of Daniel who cared about people, who believed in building a legacy that helped others. "Maybe there's another way," she offered gently. "I know we're not in the best place, but if you want someone to brainstorm with, I'm here." Daniel's gaze softened, gratitude flickering in his tired eyes. "I'd like that. I miss talking with you about anything really." Something in Anna's chest tightened. She missed it too. Days turned into hours of stiff politeness, overshadowed by the betrayal. Yet a thread of connection lingered. She pulled a chair closer, glancing over the reports. "Let's see if we can find a strategy that minimizes job losses. Maybe restructure some departments, explore new partnerships." They delved into discussions, analyzing numbers and possible solutions. It was oddly reminiscent of their early days, when they'd talk excitedly about Daniel's business ideas. But now, the air was heavy with unspoken regret. At midnight, they realized they'd spent hours together, forging a tentative truce. Anna rubbed her belly, feeling the baby shift. Daniel watched with a mix of awe and sorrow. He reached a hand out, then paused, unsure if he was allowed to rest it on her stomach. Anna swallowed hard, then nodded. As Daniel's palm met the gentle curve of her pregnancy, the baby kicked. They both smiled, an instinctive, genuine moment of shared wonder. For a fleeting second, the distance between them shrank, replaced by a quiet sense of possibility. In the following weeks, Anna continued to help Daniel with strategies to stabilize the company. She wasn't a business prodigy, but her intuition and attention to detail offered fresh perspectives that Daniel's executives appreciated. Together, they implemented cost-saving measures without severe layoffs, opting for temporary pay cuts at the executive level instead. Morale improved. Investors took note. Slowly the ship began to right itself. Meanwhile, Anna's due date inched closer. She spent hours reading about childbirth, attending prenatal classes, and preparing the nursery. Daniel accompanied her on more appointments, carefully treading the fragile line between them. Neither had declared a final decision on the marriage. Anna's hurt was still there, but so was a cautious sense of rebuilding. Alicia noticed the shift, dropping by with baby gifts and supportive words. Even Robert, the crisis manager, commented on how the atmosphere around Daniel had improved. Tessa remained silent, likely well settled with her 2 million. The ghost of her betrayal lingered, but it didn't overshadow daily life as it once had. Still, Anna wrestled with her conflicted emotions. She found Daniel's efforts to redeem himself sincere. He cut off all questionable social ties, gave her full access to his communications, and started therapy sessions, both individual and with Anna, when she was willing. But trust was a delicate plant, and the wound was deep. Late one night, as thunder rumbled across the city skyline, Anna felt the first sharp pangs of labor. She was in bed, trying to sleep, when a contraction ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, panic racing up her spine. Quickly, she shook Daniel awake. His eyes flew open, instantly alert. "Is it time?" She nodded, breath hitching with pain. I think so." A rush of adrenaline hit them both. They grabbed the hospital bag, called Alicia, and sped through the rain-slicked streets to Mount Sinai Hospital. Nurses whisked Anna into a birthing suite, hooking her up to monitors. The baby's heartbeat filled the room with a rapid, comforting rhythm. Daniel stood by her side, holding her hand. She gritted her teeth through contractions, sweat beading her forehead. Fear mingled with excitement. This was the day they'd meet their child, a new life born from their turbulent union. Hours blurred into a haze of pain, pushing, tears. Daniel whispered encouragement, apologizing for every misstep, promising to be a better man, a better father. Anna focused on one singular goal: bring their baby safely into the world. Despite the heartbreak, the betrayal, in that moment, she was grateful Daniel was there. At dawn, a shrill cry filled the room. Their son emerged, small and wrinkled and perfect. The nurse placed him on Anna's chest, and she burst into tears, overwhelmed by love so powerful. It erased every other thought. Daniel, tears streaming down his face, leaned in to kiss the baby's tiny forehead. They named him Benjamin, a name Anna had loved since childhood. Holding Benjamin, Anna felt the universe shift, as if everything else paled in comparison. She caught Daniel's gaze, and for a moment, forgiveness seemed possible. Not guaranteed, but attainable someday. In the days after Benjamin's birth, Anna and Daniel remained at the hospital, absorbing the joys and challenges of new parenthood. Their families visited, showering them with love and congratulations. Alicia was particularly overjoyed, snapping endless photos of her nephew. Anna noticed a transformation in Daniel. He spent hours cradling Benjamin, talking softly to him about the world, about values and dreams. It was a side of him Anna hadn't seen in a long time: gentle, vulnerable, real. While the pain of betrayal still lingered, the sight of Daniel as a doting father softened something in her heart. When they finally brought Benjamin home, Anna stepped into the nursery with awe. It was a tranquil space, soft pastel walls, a crib adorned with plush animals, a glider by the window overlooking the city. She placed Benjamin in the crib, watching as he dozed off, oblivious to the storms that had raged before his arrival. Daniel hovered in the doorway, hesitant. "Anna?" She turned, tired but content. "Yes?" He swallowed hard. "I just wanted to say I'm grateful for letting me be here, for giving me a chance to show up for our son. I know it doesn't erase what I did, but I want you to know how deeply sorry I am." Anna felt emotion welling up. "I appreciate that, I do." She glanced at Benjamin's sleeping form. "He deserves both of us at our best." Daniel nodded, stepping into the room. He tentatively wrapped an arm around Anna's shoulder. She didn't pull away. Together, they watched their newborn son breathe in gentle little sighs. The future was uncertain, but in that shared moment of parenthood, they found a fragile promise of hope. Time passed. Benjamin grew, and so did the complexities of Anna and Daniel's relationship. Therapy sessions became a weekly routine. Anna unpacked the betrayal, Daniel confronted his flaws, and they tentatively rebuilt trust. It wasn't linear. There were arguments, setbacks, nights Anna slept in the guest room. But there were also breakthroughs, moments of genuine closeness that hinted at a stronger bond than before. Professionally, Daniel fought tooth and nail to restore Calhoun Industries. Bit by bit, the company stabilized, regaining investor confidence. Reports praised Daniel's resilience, attributing it to his renewed focus. Only Anna and a few others knew the personal cost behind that focus. Then came the final twist of karma, Tessa's downfall. News broke that she'd attempted a similar blackmail on Winston Mackey himself, trying to extort money by threatening to leak false secrets about Mackey's company. But Mackey had set a trap, collaborating with law enforcement. Tessa was arrested on charges of attempted extortion and fraud. The tabloids devoured the scandal, though they never mentioned Daniel or Anna, thanks to the ironclad NDA. When Anna heard the news, she felt a weight lift. Tessa was finally facing the consequences of her actions. The chapter of fear was truly closing. A sense of poetic justice shimmered, as though the universe had balanced itself. By the time Benjamin celebrated his first birthday, Anna and Daniel found themselves in a more peaceful place. The affair and blackmail remained part of their history, an unerasable scar, but they had navigated through it together. Anna had witnessed Daniel's genuine remorse, his willingness to be better, and Daniel had discovered that true power, indeed, came from honesty, vulnerability, and respect. They threw a small birthday party at the penthouse, just family and close friends. Benjamin squealed with delight at the sight of balloons and cake, blissfully unaware of the drama that once threatened to tear his family apart. Anna caught Daniel's eye across the room, and he gave her a soft smile. She smiled back, a signal that while forgiveness wasn't absolute, love still had room to grow. Later that night, once everyone had gone and Benjamin was asleep, they stood on the balcony together, gazing at the shimmering cityscape. Daniel slipped a hand around her waist. "We've come a long way." Anna leaned into him, exhaling softly. "Yes, we have." They shared a quiet moment, each knowing the future remained unwritten. But for the first time in a long while, that uncertainty felt like possibility rather than dread. This story reminds us that trust can be torn apart in an instant and takes far longer to mend. Secrets, temptations, and betrayals don't just threaten our happiness, they challenge our very identity and the foundations we've built with those we love. When deception collides with loyalty, when ambition eclipses compassion, the fallout tests even the strongest bonds. Yet, amid the wreckage, hope can still find its way. Confronting our darkest mistakes, taking responsibility, and refusing to give in to blackmail or fear can lead to a path of redemption. If this tale of heartbreak, scandal, and ultimate resilience resonates with you, consider sharing it with friends who might need a reminder that even in life's most tumultuous storms, there's always a chance for renewal.